If there is one thing I have always believed in, it is that love tales are written in the stars. My name is Anna. Mine seemed to be no different. I recall the day I got to know Lucas. He was a medical student, and I was a business student, and we were both engrossed in the rush of fulfilling our aspirations. Lucas approached me while the campus cafeteria was humming with activity from students. It was difficult to notice his self-assured gait. "Is this seat taken?" he said, pointing to the vacant chair next to me. Startled, I glanced up. "No, it's free," I said, attempting to hide my interest. With a grin, he took a seat. "I'm Lucas. I've seen you around in the business block. You're Anna, right?" My heart gave me a tiny thrill as he realized who I was. I said, taking note of the pile of medical books on his side, "Yes, I am. So, you're a med student?" He laughed and said, "Guilty as charged. But when I'm not buried in these, I enjoy a bit of photography. What about you? What's beyond the textbooks for Anna?" We engaged in lengthy talks about our interests, goals, and even our strange pastimes for what seemed like hours. Lucas had the ability to make anything appear fascinating. His views on life were fascinating, and his humor was contagious. Our informal cafe meetups developed into dinner dates, lengthy walks, and endless chats as the weeks stretched into months. The evening Lucas told me he loved me is still fresh in my memory. At the university's astronomy tower, we were stargazing. His voice was anxious. "Anna, I don't know how to say this, but I feel like I've known you my whole life," he continued. "I love you. There, I said it." With my pulse racing in my chest, I turned to face him. "Lucas, I love you too." That was the start of our brief love affair. We were the ideal combination, the pair that everyone looked up to. After graduating and beginning our jobs, we soon became husband and wife. I believed that we had a same desire of a future together, love and respect. I had planned a modest gathering at our house with Lucas. I had planned for my mother-in-law, Grace, and close friends to spend the evening laughing and sharing memories. While cleaning up the crumbs from our celebratory meal, I heard bits and pieces of a discussion coming through the open door from the porch. "I'm telling you, Lucas is not the saint everyone thinks he is." A drunken voice that I knew to be Mark, Lucas's hospital co-worker. My pulse pounded in my chest as I hesitated, a glass stuck in my palm. "Mark, you've had too many." Another voice, possibly our neighbor Tom, chuckled. Mark urged, his voice becoming louder and more serious. "No, listen. Lucas, he's got a whole other side. You wouldn't believe the things he's capable of." My head was racing, and I started to feel uneasy. The certainty in Mark's voice unnerved me, even though I wanted to write it off as drunken gibberish. Pulling myself together, I went out onto the porch and pretended not to notice. Attempting to appear casual, I said, "Everything okay out here, guys?" Mark raised his head, his gaze a little averted. "Oh, hey, Anna. We were just talking about how lucky Lucas is to have you." Tom looked at me sadly, clearly ashamed by Mark's condition. "Don't mind him, Anna. He's just had a bit too much to drink." I feigned a laugh. "Well, let's not keep the night young forever. Mark, do you need a ride home?" No, I'm fine. I just need some fresh air," Mark curtly said, flicking away his hand. My mind was racing with ideas as I turned to go back inside. Was Mark just talking incoherently? Or was there a terrible reality he was hiding with his words? I was tormented by the mixture of contempt and sympathy in his gaze. I stood quietly in the kitchen once again, the party sounds just a faint hum in the background. The talks I had overheard concerning Lucas weighed heavily on me in the days that followed the upsetting party, casting lengthy shadows over our previously peaceful household. When I got the surprisingly terrible news, our distance grew. It was the morning after my job was fired. When my manager broke the news, I felt as if the office's harsh white walls were closing in on me. He avoided looking into my eyes and added, "I'm sorry, Anna, but we have to let you go. It's not your performance. It's just the company restructuring." I felt the words strike me like a tsunami, becoming numb and dazed. I told Lucas the news that evening. I wasn't prepared for his response. His voice was more filled with annoyance than worry. You lost your job? How could you let this happen, Anna? I attempted to clarify. Lucas, it wasn't in my control. The company is downsizing. I'll find something else soon. We have bills to pay, Anna. You know my salary alone isn't enough with the mortgage and all. This is just great, Lucas added, sounding harsh and acerbic, but he didn't seem to hear me. The toughest weeks were those that followed. The home seemed chilly and remote, where there had once been laughing and happiness. Lucas distanced himself from me and became into a stranger. Small things, like the extra coffee I purchased or the marginally higher power bill, were the source of our arguments. One night, Lucas came into the kitchen as I was preparing supper. You know we need to cut back on expenses, so why did you buy this expensive cheese, Anna? He angrily said, holding out the little block of cheese like it was proof. I shook my head and said, It's just a small treat, Lucas. We haven't had anything nice in weeks. His words cut through the air and into my heart. Small treats add up, Anna. Maybe you don't realize it because you're not the one working right now. I let go of the knife I was holding, wounded and angry at the same time. With difficulty maintaining a steady voice, I added, Lucas, I am trying my best to find a job. You know how much I loved my work. Losing it wasn't easy for me either. He sighed deeply and ran his hands through his hair. Lucas said, his eyes not addressing me, I know, Anna. It's just frustrating. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. My already complicated life became even more complicated when I started receiving cryptic messages, on top of the financial burden of losing my job and the developing distance in our marriage. I was conflicted about addressing Lucas and learning the truth about the anonymous sender's intentions because of these cryptic letters that alluded to sinister secrets from his past. A few days after the party, it began with a beep on my phone one peaceful evening. Curled up on the sofa, I tried to read to pass the time, but my thoughts kept going back to the disturbing talk I had overheard. There's more to Lucas than you know, was the message that came from an unidentified phone number. I felt cold sweats running down my back as I glanced at the TV. Who may this be? Furthermore, what did they mean? I hesitated when touching the keys. Who is this? What are you talking about? Was my last response. The phone nearly buzzed right away. Lucas isn't the man you think he is. Be careful. My text reply was, Lucas is my husband. I trust him. More to persuade myself than the stranger. The message was ominous and unsettling. Trust can be a dangerous thing. Don't say, I didn't warn you. Next day, I made the decision to speak with Lucas, making a lunch for himself in the kitchen. I tried to seem casual as I inquired, Lucas, have you been keeping things from me? Startled, he raised his head. What do you mean, Anna? Despite my best attempts to remain calm, my voice quivered as I said, I received some strange messages last night suggesting that you're not honest with me. Lucas's face became stern. You're listening to some random texts over your husband? Anna, that's absurd. Uncertain of myself, I trailed off. But they seemed so certain. Anna, you know me. We've been together for years. Are you going to let some anonymous coward plant doubts in our relationship? Lucas firmly remarked, setting down his sandwich and approaching me. I wanted to accept him as genuine and dismiss the texts as a malicious joke. I guess you're right. It just scared me, that's all. With a hug, Lucas said, I'm here, and I'm not hiding anything. Trust me. I leaned into his arms, desperate to trust what he was saying. However, once sown, the doubtful seed would not be ignored. I still remember that day as if it were a scar, the day I realized how deeply betrayed Lucas was. As I sit in our living room, it seems less like a haven and more like a battlefield. My hands shook as I gripped my phone, the screen showing me another mysterious message from the sender who remained nameless and had been bothering me. There was a tap on the door as I turned to face Lucas. When I opened it, I saw a guy whose looks were quite similar to mine, but whose eyes told a different narrative from the one I married. His voice sounded a little harsh and sorrowful. You must be Anna. I'm Alex, Lucas's brother, he continued. Alex? But Lucas never mentioned, was the last thing I said, seeming confused. He laughed a little but dryly. I'm not surprised. We haven't spoken in years. Can we talk? Alex's narrative began to take shape as we sat down. It was a story of family conflicts, alienation, and unspoken grudges. His description of Lucas gave me a totally different impression of the person I knew. My voice was hardly audible above a whisper as I questioned, "Why are you telling me all this?" "Because I know about Lucas's affairs. And it's not just infidelity, Anna. There are things he's involved in, illegal things in his practice." A chilly shudder went down my spine. How can you prove any of this? Alex gave me a folder containing emails, papers, and pictures without saying anything. The evidence was overwhelming. As I came to terms with my husband's secret existence, my heart fell. That's when Lucas entered. When he saw Alex, his shocked eyes expanded. His usually calm attitude crumbled as he shouted out, "What the hell are you doing here?" Alex straightened up and met Lucas's intense stare. "I'm here to reveal the truth, brother. Anna deserves to know everything." Lucas turned to face me, his eyes filled with a mixture of dread and rage. "Anna, don't listen to him. He's always been jealous of me, of us." With my pulse pounding, I glanced between the two brothers. "Is it true, Lucas? The affairs, the illegal activities?" Lucas said in an erratic voice, "Anna, I need you to understand, the things Alex has been feeding you, they're not entirely true." I felt both fury and sadness as I balled my fists. Not entirely true? Lucas, how can I even trust a word you say? And those messages, those photographs, they showed a side of you I never knew existed. With a groan, Lucas combed through his hair. "I won't lie to you, Anna. I made mistakes, terrible ones. But Alex, he's twisted the truth, added his own narrative to hurt me, to hurt us." I displayed the pictures that were supplied to me. They showed Lucas in vulnerable poses, his face easily seen, his actions irrefutable. "And these? Are these also twisted truths? The late nights, the secret meetings, they were all real, weren't they?" He averted his gaze, his stance betraying his sense of shame. "Yes, they're real. I was unfaithful, Anna. But there's more to the story. Alex, he's been harboring resentment towards me for years, and he used my mistakes to drive a wedge between us, to destroy what we had." A bitter chuckle leaked out of my mouth. "What we had? Lucas, how can you even speak of what we had when you've shattered it all with your lies and betrayals? How can you stand there and expect me to sift through the truths and lies when the evidence of your infidelity is staring me in the face?" Lucas took a step toward her, regretful in his demeanor. "I know I've broken your trust, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know, not everything Alex told you is accurate. He's manipulated the situation, used my mistakes to create a narrative that would push you away from me completely." I shook my head, holding on to the pictures tightly. "Manipulated or not, the fact remains that you cheated, Lucas. You stepped out of our marriage, our vows. No amount of explanation can erase what you did, what I saw. Around me, the world I knew was collapsing. My marriage, which had previously brought me happiness and love, was now in ruins due to dishonesty and treachery. Like a ship adrift on a stormy sea, I felt lost. I found myself knocking on my mother-in-law Grace's door in this desolate condition, looking for not only a safe haven, but also a confidant. "Anna, my dear, what brings you here at this hour?" Grace said as she answered the door, worry etched on her face. My voice was almost audible as I paused before saying, I need to talk to you, Grace. It's about Lucas." We sat in her quaint living room. Her herbal tea's lulling scent failed to calm my jangled nerves. I told them everything that I had heard, including the cryptic messages, the overheard discussion, and the devastating revelation of Lucas's adultery. Grace silently listened, her countenance a mixture of amazement and melancholy. When I was done, she reached out and grasped my hand with a steady, comforting grip. "Oh, Anna," with a sigh. "I never imagined Lucas could do something like this. He always seemed so devoted to you." A tear started to fall down my face. "I also thought so. I said. But that's not all, Grace. The person sending me those messages, it was Alex, Lucas's twin brother. Alex? Grace's bewildered brow wrinkled. But they haven't spoken in years. Why would he suddenly involve himself in your marriage? He said he wanted to expose Lucas to get back at him for some old family feud. And he has evidence, Grace. Evidence of illegal activities Lucas has been involved in at the hospital. Grace sat back, stunned into incredulity. It's too much, Anna. But we need to do what's right. You can't stay married to him, not after all this. I know. I want a divorce, Grace. But I'm scared. I don't know how to go about it, especially with these new revelations, I said, nodding as a feeling of resolution began to grow inside me. Grace spoke firmly. You won't be alone in this, Anna. Her voice was powerful, demonstrating her inner strength. We'll find a good lawyer. We'll make sure you get out of this marriage safely and with what you deserve. I managed to respond. Thank you, Grace, my heart aching yet heartened by her encouragement. I never thought I'd be in this position, but I'm grateful you're here with me. Grace gave me a firm grip on the hand, silently assuring me of her support. Lucas may be my son, Anna, but what he's done is unforgivable. You're not just my daughter-in-law. You're like a daughter to me. We'll get through this together. I never thought I would be sitting across from Grace in the sterile, unwelcoming office of our attorney, Ms. Harper, in the middle of a legal dispute. Yet here I was. The walls were adorned with diplomas and legal volumes, which gave off an air of both comfort and intimidation. Grace, who is always a source of strength, gripped my hand firmly and expressed worry and resolve in her eyes. Trying to maintain my composure, I said, So, Miss Harper, what are our next steps? This isn't just a simple divorce case anymore, is it? With her eyes focused on the file lying open in front of her, Ms. Harper adjusted her spectacles. No, Anna, it's not. The evidence Alex brought forward changes the entire landscape of this case. We're not just talking about infidelity now. We're dealing with criminal activities. Grace leaned forward, forceful yet angry in her tone. We want to make sure that Lucas pays for what he's done, not just to Anna but to those he's wronged in his practice. I nodded, filled with a sudden appreciation for Grace's resolute assistance. Yes, and I need to know that I'm safe, that he can't hurt me anymore. Ms. Harper raised her head and met mine. Anna, I assure you, you're in safe hands. We're going to pursue not only the divorce and alimony, but also push for criminal charges against Lucas. It's important that justice is served. Alex entered the office as the door creaked open, his presence filling the space right away. With a hint of resentment in his voice, he said, I heard Lucas is trying to discredit Anna, claiming she's emotionally unstable. Grace's hold on my hand became more firm. That man would stoop to anything, but we won't let him get away with it. Something simmering within of me made me think, he's trying to turn this around on me, isn't he? How do we fight this? With a mixture of dread and resolution. The papers in front of Ms. Harper were jumbled. We fight with the truth, Anna. Your character and reputation speak for themselves, and with the emails Alex retrieved and the testimonies from Lucas's colleagues, we have a strong case. With a stern attitude, Alex moved closer. I've also been in touch with a few more people from the hospital who are willing to testify against Lucas. It's time he faced the consequences. I inhaled deeply as I became aware of how serious the situation was. I just want this to be over. I want to move on with my life. And you will, Anna, Grace murmured, holding my hand. We're all here for you. Lucas won't get away with what he's done. We spoke and planned for ours, counting down the days before the court date. One night, during one of our late-night planning sessions, she said to me, Next week everything is going to change. We will be in court, standing up for the truth and your future. Her seriousness struck a chord with me, signaling the end of our meticulous planning and the beginning of our actual meeting with Lucas in court, where the last chapter of our shared past would close and a new, independent future for me would begin. I felt the weight of numerous eyes on me as I took my seat, and the courtroom hummed with a tight tension. Grace was always at my side, her comforting presence a constant, her steadfast support a quiet source of strength. The crucial moment I had both feared and eagerly anticipated started to happen when the judge called the court to order. The first to speak was Lucas's lawyer, who seemed polished and well-prepared. "Your Honor, we're here to discuss the baseless claims against my client. Mr. Lucas has been a pillar of the community, a dedicated surgeon, and a loyal husband. The allegations against him are not only unfounded, but are a deliberate attempt to tarnish his reputation." I was suddenly filled with wrath as his attorney went on. "Your Honor, the person described does not exist in reality. The Lucas I knew shattered our vows, our trust, and the life we built together," I said, taking a long breath before continuing. Grace gave me a tight grasp on the hand, exuding bravery. Her voice resounded loud and clear in the courtroom as she continued. "Anna has not only endured the pain of betrayal, but also the slander and manipulation that followed." The judge listened carefully, looking from us to Lucas. "And what evidence do you present to support these claims?" said the man. I showed them the pictures, the indisputable evidence of Lucas's adultery. As the pictures were shared, the courtroom murmurs became more and more intense. "These images don't prove anything beyond a misunderstanding. And what of the claims of manipulation and resentment from Mr. Alex?" argued Lucas's lawyer, making his face pale. Grace rose up before I could reply, her voice strong. "Your Honor, the real manipulation lies in the attempt to disguise deceit and betrayal as misunderstandings. Anna's pain and the evidence presented speak louder than the feeble justifications of a man caught in his own web of lies." With a somber nod, the judge's countenance was inscrutable. "I've heard enough. I'll take these arguments and the evidence presented under consideration. This court will reconvene after a brief recess to deliver the verdict." We felt the weight of the occasion descend over us as we entered the hallway. After the war was waged, destiny and justice would decide how it turned out. Regardless of the outcome, the court case had been a monument to the power of truth and the unbreakable link between a mistreated lady and the unexpected supporter who saw her through her darkest moments. We were brought back into the courtroom after a tense intermission that seemed like it went on forever. As we sat down, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the air as the audience's whispers faded into an oppressive quiet. Grace put her hand in mine and gripped it tightly, sending a quiet but powerful message of support. The judge reappeared with a solemn demeanor, and the room became silent. "This court finds sufficient grounds to grant the divorce petition filed by Anna," he said, his voice crisp and steady, "in light of the evidence presented and the testimonies heard." I felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived because of the seriousness of the judge's remarks that followed. Furthermore, considering the evidence of Mr. Lucas's infidelity and the impact on the marital relationship, the court awards an appropriate alimony to Anna. Lucas's once confident countenance was now displaying a look of shock. An anxious murmur from his attorney reached him, but Lucas didn't appear to hear it. "Justice, Anna. It's not just about the ruling, it's about you standing up for yourself." Grace leaned down and whispered. The judge went on to say, "This court also advises Mr. Lucas to reflect on his actions and their consequences. The dissolution of a marriage is not a matter the court takes lightly." Grace took my hand and lovingly massaged it as we exited the courthouse. "Anna, you made the correct decision." With sympathy and conviction in her voice, she murmured, "This is a fresh beginning for you." I nodded, attempting to force a grin. "Grace, I am aware. Nothing about it seems like a win. I was incredibly in love with him. How did things end up here?" Grace drew me into a close embrace. "Love isn't always enough to make things better. Lucas made his decisions, and you have no responsibility for this." My wedding ring was heavy on my finger as we descended the courthouse stairs. I paused and turned to face Grace. I slipped the ring off carefully and said, I need to do this. It seemed as like I was letting go of a piece of myself that was entwined with Lucas. Grace nodded, realizing the importance of the situation. Go ahead, Anna. You're not merely Lucas's spouse. As a strong, self-reliant woman, you deserve to be happy. After giving the ring a quick glance, I threw it into a nearby fountain. As I saw it go into the river, I sensed the end of a chapter in my life. My cell phone buzzed as we made our way to Grace's vehicle. It was from Lucas's twin brother, Alex. I hope the court gave you what you deserved. Lucas was long overdue for this. After hesitating, I said, Thank you, Alex, for everything. Grace peered past me. Is that you, Alex? What state is he in? He is getting by. He's still battling his own issues and the family conflict, but through it all, he's shown to be an unexpected ally. I felt liberated as we drove out, the courtroom becoming smaller in the rearview mirror. Though unknown, the future was finally mine to mold for the first time in a very long time. Anna, what now? Grace questioned, pulling me back to the here and now. Grace, I begin rebuilding. I muttered, one day at a time, as I prepared myself to face whatever was ahead and peered out the window. I felt it was time to start a new chapter in my life as I closed the book on my marriage to Lucas, feeling a combination of relief and profound grief. I made the choice to relocate in order to take advantage of the chance for a new beginning and resolved to reconstruct my life with more fortitude and hope. It seemed like a new universe when I moved to Portland. The city appeared to reflect my newfound feeling of optimism, with its colorful streets and the almost constant smell of rain in the air. I began piecing together the pieces of my existence here, in this busy metropolis. One evening, Grace said, I think this place is going to be good for you, Anna. As we sat in my new apartment, surrounded by half-hung drapes and unopened boxes, I sent her a quick grin of appreciation. I couldn't have done this without you, Grace. You've been my rock through all of this. Grace grabbed my hand as she reached across. You're stronger than you know, Anna, and remember, I'm just a phone call away. I first got to know Ethan in these early days of Portland. He was an artist, and his life stood in sharp contrast to the regimented environment Lucas and I had shared. Ethan's enthusiasm for his work was contagious, and his studio was a riot of color and imagination. Ethan shook my hand warmly and remarked, You must be Anna, when we first met. I've heard a lot about you from my sister. And all good things, I hope, I said, a bit startled by his focused stare. Only the best, he smiled to reassure them. I laughed harder than I had in months with Ethan, and our talks flowed easily. He had an invigoratingly unique perspective on life. Ethan stopped in front of a bright picture while we were strolling through a local art museum one day. He questioned, What do you think? It's stunning, I said. Vivid, full of life. That's how I view life. Ethan turned to face me. Don't you think that even in the aftermath of the darkest storms, color is always waiting to emerge? His statement struck a chord with me, reflecting my own experience. I'm beginning to think that, I said. One night, over dinner at my house, we started talking about my history with Lucas. With my scars still fresh, I hesitated. Ethan, there's something about my past I think you should know, I said, stuttering in my speech. He stretched across the table and placed his palm over mine. Anna, we all have a past. It's what makes us who we are. You don't have to share anything you're not ready to. The barriers around my heart started to break even further when I saw the compassion in his eyes. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Thank you, Ethan. It means a lot to have someone who understands.